To fill the space between now and my next major devlog, I thought it would be useful to you, the viewing audience, to go over what tools I use to make my horror game. So yeah, consider this a filler episode, but at least this filler has some useful info in it. Probably. Now, confession time. I'm sort of cheating with this one. I've actually talked about this before when I was still writing dev blogs on my website. However, that was more of a general look at all tools I've used across all the games I've created. This devlog will focus instead on what tools are being used for my horror game right now. So that's the first reason to remake that devlog. The second reason is that reading is boring. To be clear, this is focused specifically on software tools used to make the game, not game assets. That means this devlog will be talking briefly about Unreal Engine 5, Blender, GIMP, MakeHuman, Audacity, FL Studio, OBS Studio, and VSDC Video Editor. I guess you could also throw in OpenOffice in there, but come on. It's a word processor, you know what it does. Without further ado, let's learn tools. My name is Lance, aka Infinite Level, and I'm making a psychological horror game called What Hides in Dreams, Where Death Leaves Scars. And these are the tools I've been using to make the game. So it feels appropriate to kick things off with the big man himself, Unreal Engine 5. This is very much the meat and potatoes of my software suite. I'm pretty sure I spend 90% of my dev time in this singular piece of software. Heck, I think I spend 90% of my general free time in this piece of software. And right away, I feel like I know what some of you are going to say. Ew, Unreal Engine 5? That thing sucks because games run bad on it. And I hear you, but also... I'm sorry, a quick aside. I remember when I was making the Future project on Unreal Engine 4, and in the last few months before release, I had people telling me, ugh, why don't you just use Unreal Engine 5? It's the latest and greatest and better. Granted, I'm pretty sure those were just children on TikTok, like 10-year-olds, but it sure is funny how the discourse can change. Anyway, yes, I use Unreal Engine 5, and yes, I am very aware of the reputation it currently has. But at the risk of being a shill, I like it. Oh sure, it's got issues. It's a hefty piece of software that can be oddly cantankerous at times, and to this day, I feel like there's a bit too much reliance on blueprints, with said reliance likely being because programming in C++ feels wonky at the best of times. But on the other hand, I love how easy it is to just make things. Building levels piece by piece is very simple and fun. Blueprints allow just about any idiot to make a game, and there's tons of information on how to use it, both through official docs and the plethora of people that have miraculously had all the same problems as I do. It's also an engine with a lot of depth. There's so many different types of objects and data types, and I still haven't learned it all. What's a neural profile? I don't know, and it does kinda scare me. But as for how I use it, well, it's kinda involved in a lot of things. It is where the actual game is made, after all. But to attempt to summarize it, this is where I build out my levels and systems for the game. I kickstarted development by utilizing the Horror Engine project template, then modified several aspects of Horror Engine to tailor it to What Hides in Dreams. That includes everything from creating custom monster characters, to adding weapons for the player to use, such as an axe, and even dramatic alterations to the save and load systems, among a plethora of other things. Past any modifications to Horror Engine, my time in Unreal Engine could be broadly split into 3 parts: creating monsters, creating levels, and fixing problems that creating new monsters and levels caused. It's a whole cycle. Very vicious. Put another way, this is basically where all the content comes together. I make a lot of the assets and other programs, then attempt to have them all play nice together within the sandbox called Unreal Engine 5. The glue holding it together is the C++ code I use for base systems, mainly monster behaviors and a few common gameplay elements, followed by blueprints which give the various assets a specific job to do. But how about those assets, huh? Where do they come from? Well, that's where everything else comes in. Making any custom models, such as for monsters or unique decorative objects, tends to require some combination of Blender, GIMP, and/or MakeHuman. And as a quick note, I specify custom models because I do make use of a handful of generic assets. I'm talking things like glass materials, furniture, walls. But if it needs to be something specific or I otherwise can't find any decent generic assets to use, Then I turned to the programs mentioned earlier. I already did a whole devlog on how I go about making monsters in my game, but to briefly recap, that process involves MakeHuman, Blender, and possibly GIMP if I need some textures to be a bit more specialized. I create a basic humanoid shape in MakeHuman with the rough proportions that I want the monster to have, before then taking that base human and transforming it into a friendly gentleman. Also within Blender is where I make animations for a monster before exporting it all to Unreal Engine to then create the actual monster behavior. As for other models, that relies almost solely on Blender, with the occasional texture creation and editing done in GIMP. Speaking of GIMP, GIMP's primary function is for texture creating and editing, as well as creating all the graphical elements of the game's menus, some on-screen HUD, and all the game's story notes. A surprising amount of time is also spent opening up GIMP to convert large texture files to something more reasonable. You would not believe the amount of people who apply 4K textures to a supposedly game-ready model of an object that takes up maybe 1% of screen space, even when standing up close to it. But aside from that, it's mainly GUI elements I'm making in GIMP. Of this trio of programs, MakeHuman is the odd one out in that it is literally only for one purpose. But that purpose is for monster creation, which does make it kinda important. It's a pretty straightforward tool to use, and in any game where realistic humanoids are going to make up the bulk of your characters, it's a great tool to have. Over in the audio department, we have Audacity and FL Studio for sound effects and music creation respectively. Audacity is pretty straightforward. You can record and edit sounds and apply some additional effects like echoes and vocodes, and that's it in a nutshell. I'm sure a more advanced audio engineer can get more into what you can do in Audacity or point you to other tools alongside Audacity to create even greater sound effects, but for me in my game, I've found that Audacity and some basic effects is plenty sufficient. This, of course, is where I record dialogue for the mysterious characters speaking to the player in levels, as well as sounds for my monsters, like so. It's fun. As for individual sounds like physics objects and items, I'll often go to Freesound to get sound effects that I can use as a base for the sound, then adjust said sound as needed for whatever I'm making the sound effect for. For music creation, I use FL Studio and a smattering of instrument plugins to create my game's soundtrack. Of all the tools I use, FL Studio is the only one that's paid, where all the others are free of charge. But the nice thing is, unlike other software, you only pay for FL Studio once, and all future updates are free. May the owners of this software never change. FL Studio might possibly be the tool I use the least though, because once music is made, it's typically not remade later. It's a bit of a shame too, because I do like making music, but it is easily the area where once it's done, and probably not going to change. But when I do use it, I enjoy my time in FL Studio. There's a bit of a learning curve, but once you figured out how things work, it's hardly any trouble at all making music for your game in this software. Depending on the edition you buy, you're of course limited by your instruments and whatever recordings you can do yourself. But I get around that by using plugins to expand my sound and instrument library, ultimately letting me make just about anything I want. I bash instruments together until I make something I think is kinda neat, then put it all together to make a track, and then export it out and into Unreal for use in-game. Straightforward job, straightforward process. I like to keep things simple where I can. I'll add an honorable mention here for Spitfire Audio and their Labs product for providing a ton of free instruments and sounds to use in your music creation. The vast majority of sounds you hear in the music for What Hides in Dreams comes from Labs, and I'm very glad to have stumbled upon it. Next up are tools that aren't necessarily for the game's development, but if it weren't for these, well, you wouldn't be watching this video. OBS Studio and VSDC Video Editor are my primary tools for video recording and editing. Why VSDC? Because it's free, and I am a cheap man. And honestly, VSDC has all the things I need to make the videos I want. Until that changes, I will probably be sticking with it. OBS is actually a very recent inclusion in my list of tools. Before, I was using Bandicam to record gameplay video, which is another paid program. I had originally bought Bandicam many years ago when I was still young and full of hope, and at the time I'm not even sure that OBS was a thing. After building my latest computer though, I decided to finally use OBS since it's also got streaming capabilities on the off chance I ever do that. But once again, pretty straightforward purpose for these. I record gameplay and other video with OBS, then hop into VSDC to edit the video into something watchable. Obviously, this combination of tools is how game trailers are made, as well as all my devlogs. Not a whole lot to elaborate on here. They have one job. And that's all the major tools I use in the creation of What Heights and Dreams. There's a lot of miscellaneous things I use as well, such as Git for version control, but many of these things would only make for like, I don't know, a couple seconds worth of things to talk about. But I guess if you really want a full list... And there you go. I trust that this video will give you a better understanding of how many different programs are involved in the creation of a game. I can remember when I was a kid and early teen that I thought everything was done in the game engine. Somehow. Of course, I learned over time that that absolutely was not the case, and now I hope that I can pass that knowledge along to someone else. With the exception of FL Studio, all of these programs are free to use, so if any of this sounds interesting to you, then there's no harm in downloading the program yourself and seeing what you can do with it. You never know, you might like it. That'll do from me. Like this video if you liked it, and of course subscribe for more monthly devlogs from yours truly. If you think my game looks cool, then head on over to Steam and wishlist What Hides in Dreams. Wishlists are how Steam gauges interest in a game and is often how they decide if a game deserves to be put in front of more people. So if you like what you see and think other people would like to see What Hides in Dreams, then a wishlist would be much appreciated. As always, link is in the description below. Thanks for watching, have yourselves a most excellent day, and until next time.